there. And today we have a very, very special birthday lady sitting up here. We want to sing happy birthday to Bonnie.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Bonnie. Happy birthday to you. Hey, Bonnie!
My gift to you, Bonnie, is I didn't sing.
Someone snitched on me.
Good morning. My name is Mark Hopkins. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees here at this church and serving as worship associate this morning. And I want to wish a warm welcome to all of you. I emphasize the warm welcome because it's a chilly morning. And unlike Keith over here, who refuses to give in to the terrorists, he will not dress for the cold until he must. I see a lot of sweaters, coats, jackets. Yeah, it's that time. Here at the church, we want to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Tocobaga and Seminole people. And for those who may have some vision difficulties, I'm going to describe what I see. I see in front of me about 50 people in the sanctuary, various ages and various settings that you're sitting in. Behind me is our talented choir of 8 voices, but it sounds like much more. And over to my right is the birthday girl, our music director, Bonnie, with the piano. And on the left is Jami, Cruz, our faith formation director. So welcome. Today we're honored to share the service with Reverend D. Graham. Reverend Graham has been a guest with us before. We're really delighted to have you back. Reverend Graham tells us that with our deep connection to nature, she's always been drawn to this church as the spiritual heart of Tarpon Springs. She is currently affiliated as a community minister with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota, having earned her master's in divinity at the Starr King School for Ministry. After ordination at the UU Church of Charlotte, North Carolina, she eventually returned home to the Tampa Bay area, where she has served as a professional chaplain and as a parish minister. A native of Bradenton, she is now primarily retired and writing books that tell the stories of historic Florida. Again, welcome to our service.
And with that, we will have our opening hymn. I Know This Rose Will Open, number 396 in the gray hymnal. Now this song is a round, and we will sing it all together one time through. First I'll play it so you can get the tune, and then we'll sing it together all
Let me know when a sermon
once.
comes on.
Yeah. And then the 2 additional times in a round, the first row will begin, I know this rose, and then the back row will begin, I know this rose. So pay attention to the numbers up here. I know this rose, I know this rose. And you can choose either part to sing, the early part or the late part. So here it's the tune.
Please stand.
Everyone together.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open.
Now the round.
I know this rose will. I know this rose will. I know my fear. I know my fear. I know my soul. I know my soul. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know my fear.
I just texted you.
I know my fear. I
I invite you to wake up. Wake up in the morning where the orange blossoms grow, where the sun comes peeping into where I'm sleeping, and the songbirds say, hello. Take heart. We live here in Florida, where the future invites you to grow.
We light our chalice today with the words from Joseph Cherry, our beacon of hope. As we gather together for worship this morning, being both near and far, we light our chalice as we do each week. It is a symbol of our faith. May its light be a beacon of hope for the many, those who feel lost, those who feel threat, those who feel tired, those who are uncertain. May our beacon of hope help you find home, help you feel safe, give you respite, and honor your searching mind and spirit. And now if you'll join me in reading our covenant. We strive to look for and encourage the best in each other as we move toward justice, peace, and love for both ourselves and the world. And we move forward with each understanding, reconciliation, and a return to covenant.
And now we have Spirit of Life in your gray hymnal, number 123, 123.
This morning, we're going to talk about David and Goliath. Now, you may have heard this story from the Hebrew Scriptures or from the Christian Bible, where it's 1 Samuel 17, chapters 38 through 50. Well, we're not going to read it verbatim. And it's a little bit different than the one you may have heard before, because it's a story about courage. But it's also a story about kindness and understanding. Once upon a time, there was a giant named Goliath. Odin. Goliath lived in a land far away, and he was always causing trouble for the people who lived there. And in the same land, there was a young boy named David. David was a shepherd. He took care of his sheep every day. David was kind and gentle and he loved all of God's creatures. One day, Goliath challenged the people to a fight. He said that if anyone could defeat him, he'd leave them alone from then on. Everyone was afraid of Goliath, but David knew something had to be done. Instead of putting on armor like his brothers suggested, or taking swords and weapons like the soldiers, David selected 5 smooth stones for his slingshot. He had nothing to prove. He only wanted to free the people of Israel. He wanted to fight for freedom. David was afraid, and he knew nothing would change unless he used his skill and his mind. When Goliath came to fight him, the boy stood firm. He took aim. He waited until there was no other choice, selected just one of those smooth stones, and aimed it for Goliath's immense forehead. And that was enough. Goliath was stunned and fell to the ground. Sometimes all a bully needs to know is that we are strong enough to stand firm in the face of a threat. David backed up his strength with his knowledge and his skill. This story teaches us that even when someone seems scary or different, we can always try to understand them. It is our job to stand up for ourselves and our loved ones. But even so, we can choose kindness and thoughtful action. It is love that makes the difference. And now we sing the children out with Go Now in Peace, number 413.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the light of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the light of love surround you everywhere, love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
Now is the time in the service when we take an offering for the work and welfare of this church. You may mail your offering or go to our website or place your offering in Sunday's collection bowls as they are passed around. Also, this is an opportunity for you to fill out a visitor's card, which you'll find in the pew in front of you, so that we may contact you if you'd like to stay in touch with things that are going on here. It's the bigger of 2 cards that's available. At the end of our service, we wrap up with a period of time we call Joys and Sorrows, an opportunity for those who wish to share from their personal life an event, an opportunity for joy, or to speak to a sorrow. You may also, if you would prefer to have that message read, use the card in front of you and place that card in the offering as well. You'll have an opportunity to speak for yourself as the service wraps up later. Thank you.
If I could only relive time
As we enter into a moment of silent reflection, let's consider that silence is a medium that benefits us in many ways. Silence helps with mental clarity, healing, and self-awareness. Silence can also help improve focus and creativity. As you prepare to enter a moment of silence, choose what you would like to strengthen within yourself and use this opportunity to do so.
These words come to us from Maya Angelou. Each of you, black, white, brown, yellow, red, whatever pigment you use to describe yourself, has been paid for. But for the sacrifices made by some of your ancestors, you would not be here. They have paid for you. So when you enter a challenging situation, bring them on stage with you. Let their distant voices add timbre and strength to your words. For it is your job to pay for those who are yet to come. Courage. Courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. So may it be.
A song by Will McLean. Wherever I wander, in summer or winter, the ocean is calling me back to Florida sand, sand, sand. My Florida sand, sand, sand. The wind and the ocean are calling me back to the sand, 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 to Florida sand. Waves softly sparkle beneath the bright moon. Night birds are crying, return to me soon. Oh, Florida, Florida, my heart you've ever and always the love of this land. Florida, sand, 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 my Florida sand. Waves softly sparkle beneath the bright moon. Night birds are crying, return to me soon. Oh, Florida, Florida, my heart you've ever and always the love of this land is Florida sand, 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 Florida sand. Beautiful sun-kissed land, my Florida sand.
So, I hear there are some very strong people in this congregation. Will you raise your hands, please? Okay. I knew it. Every single one of you should have raised your hand, though, because nobody gets to this point in life without surviving some kind of trauma. Seems like there's been a lot of trauma around us in Florida lately, doesn't it? As you acknowledge this, let me ask you to pause for a moment and take a breath. Remember, we are here. We are survivors. So were our ancestors, or we would not be here now. If you're a visitor or a newcomer, you may not know that this church, this building, and this congregation have suffered some major traumas over the years since its founding in 1885. One of the biggest church traumas is the one memorialized in the George Ennis Jr. paintings, added after the hurricane of 1918. I'm sure most of you could tell this story better than I. If you don't know the story, a hurricane blew the windows out, and the famous artist volunteered to replace them at a time when building materials were scarce. Another major church trauma was the formation of a sinkhole beneath the building. An unexpected development that forced the congregation to meet elsewhere from 2013 to 2019. How many here remember that? These events are traumas that aren't easy to forget. They get rolled into the culture and the personality of the congregation, even echoing 100 years later. And yet, here we are, still strong, still today. You might think these things happened before your time, and you might think they won't affect you this late in the game, that they have no connection with you. Well, don't count on that. Trauma is generational. Even something as seemingly minor as an event that happened centuries before most of us set foot here, are all connected and we are all connected through our faith. It's something we often call the interconnected, interdependent web of life of which we are all a part. Let me tell you how close this can get. Less than 6 degrees of separation. In addition to being a minister, I'm also a genealogist. If you want to see how generationally we related are, check out those extended branches of your family. During the Gilded Age, our famous artist and church member, George Innes Jr., married Julia Goodrich Smith, heiress to America's largest publishing empire, the Century Publishing Company. Now, I can't personally verify the wealth that she had, but I can tell you she was my first cousin 7 times removed. Yes, my mother's ancestors were pilgrims and early settlers of Connecticut. My 6th great-grandfather, Robert Goodrich, was the brother of Julia's 2nd great-grandfather, David Goodrich. We can thank all those good scribes who copied down every detail of New England for this information. Anyone else related to them? I get my daughter. One way or another on this enormous human tree, we are all related. We all inherit generational trauma and generational strength. We inherit it from the communities and the groups and the religion to which we belong, from our ancestors and in our DNA. Modern research suggests that the trauma our ancestors experience can be passed down to future generations through genetics. With each new study, we're learning more about human DNA, the power of our environment, and the effects of trauma. When environmental factors or damaging events impact your genes, the changes don't change the DNA sequence. That's in the biology. It's set in utero. But they do affect how your body, how your mind responds and reads that DNA. So what matters most may not be the actual DNA sequence, but how we respond to it. The hurricane and the sinkhole were traumatic for this congregation, but we're still here today. Members found a way through, a way to respond to those traumas. And the patterns that are set in this church culture convey strength. This is a strong congregation. Even when the windows, our sight, blow away or the bottom falls out. This church isn't the only ancestry we share. We now live in a nation where the indigenous people were cruelly subjected to political conquest by foreigners. Historically, those European foreigners were our cultural ancestors, like it or not. And when they needed more indigenous labor, they imported people from Africa to enslave and work to death. Compassion for those non-white Europeans was rare. Now, war against Native Americans and the enslavement of people of color happened everywhere in America, North and South. No place was exempt. All American residents inherit some of that karma. But let me share with you a little bit about our Floridian inheritance. For one thing, despite all the hullabaloo you may be seeing this week about the Pilgrims, America's first Thanksgiving was not on Plymouth Rock. No, that goes to Florida's first governor, General Pedro Menendez, who landed with more than 100 sailors, soldiers, and colonists in St. Augustine. At the meal they shared with the native Timucua, they ate stew, sea biscuits, red wine, turkey, venison, gopher, tortoise, mullet, corn, beans, and squash. Mass was celebrated by Father Francisco Lopez de Mendoza Garales on the last day, the feast day of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin. That was our first Thanksgiving. Of course, one of those diners was my 11th great-grandfather, Nicolas Suarez de Leon. And there we go again. My ancestors arrived in Florida in 1565. But in a way, all those Spanish colonists are all of our ancestors, as are the indigenous people who lived here. The land on which this church is built, where we live and move and have our being, is all a part of that inheritance, of that story. And it comes to us embodied with the karma and the strength, the sadness and the joy of all those who came before, our ancestors. We inherit the animals the Spanish brought, like horses, and foods like oranges. But you know, one thing the Florida forebears did not bring was the concept of slavery. It was already here among the Indians. Victims of war were often taken from battle sites and enslaved by the victors. And the same was true of the Spanish, who brought enslaved people with them and then used enslaved African Americans to do the hard labor of establishing the settlement that still exists today. Our privileges here today, our standard of living, is indebted to those enslaved individuals who did the unbelievable hard work of construction and farming and all that goes into transforming open land and nature to a civilized and solidly built city, now state. Don't believe that Castillo de San Marcos National Monument was constructed without the labor of enslaved people, long before Virginia's 1620. And yet, it stands as witness to the ages. It's been through government changes and changes in morals, the battering of war, and the disrespect of times when it was allowed to decay. And still, it stands. That coquina structure stands in testimony to the history that remains in the DNA of our state, of our country, our culture, and our government. And just like our government, it is ours to lead or ours to destroy, to grow from or to fear. There was one thing that Florida did different about slavery: Catholicism, which gave Spanish subjects certain rights as slaves. They were not chattel. Their children were not born enslaved, but free. The adults went home at night to their own places, even with the option to earn enough money there to buy themselves out of slavery. For with all its restrictions and judgments, Catholicism taught that once a person was saved, converted, and confirmed as Catholic, then they had certain human rights. One of those is the right not to be forced into non-consensual sex. And we have documented cases of enslaved women who successfully sued their abusers. They not only broke the law, they broke God's law. It's true. And that's That's one of the things we have in Florida that balances out the generational trauma. It's not all bad. The thing to keep in mind is not only do we inherit the impact of cultures before us, but we inherit the strength of those who survived. At the same time, Florida was speaking Spanish, operating a port, and building a community in St. Augustine. The English and other Europeans up north, Britain, France, and the Netherlands, were actively engaged in that oceanic slave trade. Now, our privileges today, our standard of living, is indebted to those enslaved individuals who did the hard work. Does this generational trauma feel like a bit heavy right now? Well, besides the religious convictions, another thing in Spain was they lived in Convencia for roughly 7 centuries. That means the dark-skinned Moors were in a basically peaceful coexistence with Muslims, Jews, and Catholics in Spain. So while religion took on importance in the Islamic government, the population of Spain was multicolored and multi-religious. And even though those settlers came leaving the Inquisition, Florida was a multicolored, multi-ethnic settlement. We inherit that too. So that's another piece of our karma. And Florida invited Cuban soldiers who also lived in mixed race community to come and join them here in Florida. Our state not only offered arms, community, and homes for people of color, but La Florida offered a policy where any escaped slave from the north would be welcome as a free person in the Spanish colony. It remained a free settlement, Fort Mose, until Georgia attacked Florida repeatedly during the War of 1812, finally making it a United States territory in 1821. And that's when slavery changed. That's when a lot of things changed in Florida. But we had 256 years as a Spanish colony. Florida's primary language was Spanish, the religion was Catholic, and the institution of slavery was a far different thing. So let's stop for a minute. Let's take a breath. Notice a bit of Florida's nature out the window or in your mind. Feel how lively and free the natural Florida must have been before the Spanish arrived. Take another breath. Feel the shock of enormous ships landing and claiming property for themselves. Imagine the power of the priests who came to convert the native people. Imagine coming to this place from ancient Cuba, having lived with multicultural family, and moving to a place where only a few miles north, your skin color could mean enslavement and death. Those people were brave. Imagine living as a woman whose purpose in life was seen to be that of having babies, raising your sons to be soldiers and your daughters to marry sailors who would take them away to distant lands. Now take a breath. Imagine all those souls are part of you, that all those experiences are within you, that in your hands is the way forward. We imagine that because it is the leadership of this state that carries the consequences of what happened then, of what is planted in our roots. Those people are part of our cultural DNA. Many of us here bring other pieces of cultural DNA from other parts of the country and the world. Ours is the choice of what we will do with our legacy. Simply stated by Thomas Hubel, who teaches trauma healing through great wisdom traditions, our ancestors have left us with many gifts, but have also burdened us with unintegrated trauma. By learning how to connect to our roots and integrate those fragmented pieces of the past, we can bring light, creativity, innovation, and resilience into our legacies. And by doing this, work in combination with personal and collective healing, we can build a world for future generations. You see that in some of these pictures? I think I do. Listen, you cannot change the past. There's nothing for us to go out and do until we recognize our inherent, our DNA, cultural, racial, religious, all those things within us, and then accept that there's no going back. We can only go forward. Plus, going forward is our calling. We are here. Our ancestors faced setbacks, as we have and we do. Never downplay that the road ahead is scary. It is. But remember, this is ours to do. We can do hard things. In embracing our path, we transform our trauma, the ones in our lives and the ones we inherit from our ancestors, culture, and nature. These patterns are greater than just one person or one church or one state. We live and move and have our being in the interdependent web of life. Do not think we are alone. Do not think there is safety in hiding. I can tell you from personal experience that hiding in the closet only gives other people power over you. Passing by embracing white privilege only serves to deepen your generational trauma and to perpetuate the harms of the past. Black people cannot hide. Safety is an illusion. Fear leads nowhere. What we do have is faith. Our faith is what the Reverend Theodore Parker had when, as an abolitionist, he said, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, it all bends toward justice." He delivered those words speaking in the State House to the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Convention in 1858. And then the primary risk he faced was social ostracism and potential physical harm from pro-slavery forces due to his outspoken condemnation of slavery. It was a highly contentious issue in the United States at that time, particularly in the South. But he spoke in Massachusetts as a white clergyman. There was little danger of lynching there or of having his family terrorized. And that is the difference of privilege. Today, we Unitarian Universalists are by and large the heirs of his legacy and those of other outspoken radicals from our religious heritage. With this comes both privilege and responsibility, which leads us to where we are today. We are Americans and Floridians, heirs of generational trauma. As a people, we have survived and built community while living in a land at times ruled by at least 5 different nations. We stand today with far more individual rights than those who came before. Like our ancestors in faith and in this state, we live on the edge of danger. Our government is uncertain. Power brokers are shifting. Rules are changing and likely not for the better. Our education and our health care are at risk. If this scares you, with all the power we hold as individuals right now, imagine how threatening it can feel to a person whose skin tone forces them in the spotlight, or to the LGBTQ family who faces threats of violence and legal destruction. Imagine how it can feel to the disabled person who has no way to relocate or avoid healthcare workers who push their religion on them while they perform daily necessities. If it makes you feel any better, you should know that this uncertain and confusing time occurs with regularity over time. We are not unique. Here's a tip from astrologer Kendra Olin. The outermost planet of deep transformation, Pluto, entered Aquarius for the next 20 years on November 19th. This signals the birth of a new paradigm of human evolution, expansion of human rights with the values of inclusion and equality, as well as radically innovative technology. In 2025 and 2026, a lineup of the outer planets which signal these changes has not been seen for over 6,000 years. That sounds good. The world experienced similar astrological times when America was being settled, when the American Revolution was being fought, during the Civil War, and during World War II. Those turned out all right. Our ancestors lived through those times, leading us to more freedom and justice. And now it is our turn to live on the side of justice as our times transition to whatever is next. It doesn't have to be bad. In fact, we have front row seats to the very next thing. Sure, it can feel scary, but we have the courage of our ancestors and so many more resources. We are strong. You told me you are. We have our faith to see us through. What one thing will you do today to draw from your strength and fuel positive growth in our world? Doesn't have to be big. Just has to be one thing. Okay, I'm not going to make you say it out loud. But you know who you are. And you know your strength. This is your call. How will you respond?
Our closing hymn is in your teal hymn book, and it's number 1051. We are in the teal hymn book. And on number 1051, we will be repeating the first section and the last section, but not any other section. So, any repeats in the middle, we are going to skip over. I'll play through the first section so you can hear how it goes.
Today we have gathered. We acknowledge one another and recognize ourselves. People of consequence in this holy time. Let us lead with our hearts. Let us be. Amen. Blessed be. Ashe.
Where our hearts will ever meets the sky. Florida, where our hearts will ever lie, sitting proud in the ocean like a sentinel true, always shielding your own and giving welcome. Florida, land of flowers, send us by. Florida, where our dreams can all take flight, where youth's silent warning o'er the twilight of years, there are treasures for all who venture near it. Florida,
Yeah, wow. Just a note so you'll know, Reverend D will be in the area leading out the main doors to share greeting with anyone who passes that way. And then after a little bit, she'll join us in the social hall. And now to extinguish our chalice. We have basked in the warmth and beauty of this flame and this community. As this chalice flame is extinguished, let us carry its glow within. Let us kindle new sparks within these walls and beyond.